Greetings and a warm welcome from me, astrologer Patrick Arundell. Today, in the latest of my deep dive videos, I'm going to explore the astrology of September 2023, a truly exciting month. Now, first up, I'm just going to give you some brief standouts of what's going to be developing. I will share with you the event chart as September begins, because that's going to give us a lot of insights into what will play out in September. But also we have Venus ending her retrograde on the 4th, but ironically the other planet of fortune, Jupiter, slamming on the brakes on the same day, right through to the end of the year. But Mercury goes direct on the 15th. We also have a sparkling new moon in Virgo, which is angling to the exciting energies of Uranus. But then as the Sun aligns with Pluto, the potential for change is huge, particularly on the 21st, and that takes us through to the autumnal equinox. The third cardinal quadrant of the year begins. The Sun returns to Libra after 11 months, and this brings in an influence that will sustain us for the following 13 weeks, right up to the winter solstice. And then as the month comes to a close, we do have a full moon in Aries on the 29th, but also Venus and Uranus are agitating against each other on the same day. Mercury comes out of shadow on the 30th. So much to share with you. Please stay with me for more. But I'd just like to share with you a truly exciting opportunity. Year 2023 is speeding by, and year 2024 is racing towards us. If you order your year 2024 personal horoscope now, based on your unique birth data, I'll prepare the rest of 2023 free for you. Plus, in my special package of 30% off, you'll also get your character analysis report, your life roadmap. Understanding this in particular helps us to gain a much more intimate understanding of the patterns that are played out in our lives. Please see this beneath this video for more, and also beneath this video you can check out each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces, where I have prepared a deep dive video for each of those signs on an individual basis. Now, if you are new to my channel, thank you so much for joining us. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. I do try to interact with as many as possible. If you're a returning visitor, thanks for joining us once more. And if you've yet to do so, I'd be honoured if you would subscribe. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart based on Universal Central Time as we enter the new month. The Sun is in the sign of Virgo, as always, at this time of year, and close by is Mercury, the ruler of the sign of Virgo, but of course in that retrograde. But I just want to draw your attention to the position of Jupiter. Jupiter's arcing towards Mercury in a really constructive way. So despite the retrograde, as we come into the month, there are opportunities. The sign of Virgo obviously is very much to do with discrimination, with details, and making sure that we're applying ourselves in an efficient way. It is also about purity, can be about where we apply services to others or take satisfaction from our work. It's about our physical dimension. And of course, Jupiter is very much about growth. So in the sign of Taurus, very much concerned with resources. But Uranus is also in a wider angle to Mercury too. And that's asking us to think outside the box or try fresh approaches where something didn't work before. And just to provide a bit of context, I feel that August has been rather frustrating at times, because Saturn firstly and then Neptune, both in Pisces, applied to Mercury in an opposition, but also to Mars before it moved into the sign of Libra, where it starts this month. So I think we've all been feeling that things were very slowed down, and that could have been influenced in some degree by the fact that Mercury began its pre-retrograde shadow on the 4th of August and of course went retrograde on the 23rd. So as we come into this month, I feel that essentially what Jupiter and Uranus are saying to us is there are opportunities, providing we can retain a sense of patience and application and keep working through the processes in a step-by-step way, which obviously the energy of Virgo really appreciates. But I also want to tell you about that position of Mars. Mars in the sign of Libra gives us a passionate desire for fairness around relationships, but it's also technically debilitated in this sign. And if you see, it's actually in a quincunx with Saturn in house 12. So however much we might try to relate to people in an upfront and balanced way, Mars in the 7th house in Libra, there could be some psychological dimensions that we still need to overcome. So Saturn's still applying the handbrake to Mars, and that can create some frustration. Also, you can see that Neptune is still broadly opposite Mars, so that creates a distortion and again slows our energy down. So we just need to be mindful as we come into September, there could be a degree of frustration or we're encountering resistance. Things aren't quite flowing as well as they might. But then that big event on the 4th. Venus ends its 42-day retrograde in the glorious sign of Leo. It's still going to be in Leo right through to the early part of October. But Jupiter goes in, as I say, ironically, into retrograde on the same day. But the two planets of fortune are actually in a square for the first 3 weeks of this month. And you can see there's Venus at 12 degrees in Leo as we start the month, and Jupiter at 15 in Taurus. And that's asking us to continue to be a little bit canny about our resources. But if you are someone who enjoys games of chance, and you do like to have a little bit of a flutter, ironically Jupiter square Venus can be fortunate. It's one of those squares that can work in a positive way. But Jupiter is going to be rewinding, retracing its steps right through to the end of the year, the 31st of December. So I think we are going to see a continuing slowing down in the global economic climate. It's not still going to be easy. But I think in terms of relationships, Venus going forwards is certainly a lovely thing. I think through its journey, retrograde, which started at 28 degrees in Leo, accumulates at 12 degrees in Leo, it's taught us a lot, particularly that midpoint with the Cazimi. It's taught us a lot about how we relate to people, what our needs are, who are the people who are most evocative in our memories, where we need to maintain our boundaries, where pride is important, but also how we present ourselves, because that's very much to do with the glamour and magic of the sign of Leo. So I think Venus going forwards is definitely very welcome. But I've got something else to tell you, which is super exciting, because from the 12th through to the 30th, Venus is going to be in a 60-degree angle to Mars. This is known as a sextile. Very enabling, and Mars in that sector of relating is therefore applying to Venus in the sign of Leo, which is very much about romance. So despite the fact that Mars is limited and confined frustratingly in the first week of this month by the rather dour energies of Saturn, which is making us more mindful of our inhibitions, our fears and our limitations, this very exuberant and very charismatic link between Venus and Mars does promote some real opportunities to mix and mingle, despite the fact that the background energy is very much asking us to be very worthy, very disciplined, to clear up the tasks that we need to do first, the energy of Virgo, to be very conscientious. But I feel some play and some time out and some social interaction will actually be really good for all of our souls. But then on the 15th, Mercury ends its retrograde. As I said, began on the 23rd, the pre-retrograde shadow on the 4th of August. But it doesn't conclude the whole 10-week pattern until the 30th of this month. But I think what I really like about Mercury going forwards here is that it is in its host sign. So, you know, if we need to grapple with something that we've been putting off with precision and with a degree of attention to detail, then certainly Mercury going direct will immediately help. So if you've been waiting to hear about an employment, a job or a job opportunity or an appointment of some kind, so there's a much greater chance you will hear quite soon after that. Now also on the 15th we have the new moon in Virgo. Perhaps not the sexiest new moon of the whole year, but it is angling to Uranus, so we're being asked to take that more radical energy of Uranus, which is in house 2, and think outside the box. And the more we can combine attention to detail with imagination and perhaps innovation, the better we can do. And one of the great ways that I think we can do this is by how we can recycle, upcycle, be a bit more inventive, squeeze a bit more out of our budget, make food from scratch. The sign of Virgo is very much about physical health, but virtue, so we can find out fresh information which comes from Uranus's inquisitiveness. And of course the sign of Taurus is also about food. So interesting opportunity with that particular new moon over the next 4 weeks. But on the 21st we have an exact trine between the Sun and Pluto, but it starts to build up from the 18th through to the 23rd. It just peaks on the 21st. The Sun trining Pluto, trine 120 degrees, very enabling. Pluto is the most distant planet from the Sun and therefore has the greatest influence in a strange way. And in the sign of Capricorn, another earth sign, it is really transforming the way we do business. We're seeing big changes in government, and some things are really making way. You know, we're seeing a lot of exposés because Pluto reveals the truth ultimately. It's very much about power and leverage. But I feel there is going to be an agenda for a craving for some kind of purity, you know, in terms of our public servants and the leadership they give us. And you know, corruption can be revealed by this particular event, but I also think in our own personal lives we can change inside of ourselves, or our physical structures can also change too. Which brings us to that glorious third cardinal quadrant, and I'll explain that to you. So Western tropical astrology is based on the seasons, and it begins with the Sun arriving in the sign of Aries on the vernal equinox, which just ushers in the first 13-week slot, the first cardinal quadrant. Then with the summer solstice we have the Sun moving into Cancer and the second cardinal quadrant, and now we're embracing the third cardinal quadrant of the year. And my word, isn't the year rattling by at pace. Now over the next 13 weeks, collectively I think we're going to become much more aware of our relationship needs. But just so you know, Saturn in the sign of Pisces applies to this event just like he did to Mars right at the start of the month. So I don't think that this particular cardinal quadrant is going to be a panacea around our relationships. We're still needing to integrate our emotional needs more into how we interact with one another. So we see a lot of people venting these days, particularly on social media. But it's easy to do that when we're not actually in an intimate conversation within the same room or space. So this has become a little bit of a default position for many people. But a lot of the things that people are saying perhaps don't take into account fully the emotional and spiritual and psychological side of life. It's much more to do with philosophies, points of view based on particular dogmas sometimes. And that can create a lot of polarity and a lot of stress. So this particular cardinal quadrant gives us the opportunity, with Mars laying in wait for the Sun, to work hard at how we interact with others. And one of the best ways to do that is sharpen up our listening skills. And Of course, the sign of Libra is also about how we present ourselves, can be to do with fashion, and it's about fairness too. So going to be really interesting to see how that Saturn influence plays out. But on the 29th, we have the full moon, and it's in the sign of Aries. This is really interesting in a way, because on the same day, Venus, the planet of relating, going forwards in Leo, is squared exactly by the disruptive energies of Uranus. And because the full moon occurs in the sign that's very much to do with us as individuals, our self, our ego, and the Sun and Mars are in the part of the overall collective zodiac, which is to do with how we interact with one another, how we relate. Having Venus, the ruler of Libra, applying to Uranus on this day, does suggest that if there are any relationship issues that are not working well, whether it's to do with family, friends, colleagues, or in a romantic context, this full moon could push them into the open, with Venus's square with Uranus being the primer, because that's really wanting to find the truth about the relationship, because that's what Uranus is about. And it's kind of saying in a way that Venus in Leo does need to protect its reputation. Maybe some of our decisions are based on how we want to be perceived, and Venus, through its rulership of Libra, can be superficial. So Uranus obviously is not at home in Taurus, so it could be about values or financial decision making that causes stresses in relationships. But what we're looking for is a balance between what we need as individuals, Aries, and what we need to give and receive from others, Libra. And of course, this is going to be the theme of the eclipse series, which is beginning on the 14th of October with the solar eclipse in Libra, very close to the South Node. So I can't wait to share that with you for next month. But we're really developing a story here, especially with the nodal axis being across these two signs, and in a tense T-square with Pluto for the whole of this month. So we can hold on to how it has been over many years. Pluto in Capricorn is the orthodox, very much to do with a big power, big control, big leverage, or we can find that delicate balance between expressing who we are as individuals and being authentic, yet at the same time not getting swallowed by our needs for what we want to get from a situation. And we find that lovely midpoint between that and how we interact with others successfully. And then as the curtain comes down on this month, we have Mercury ending its shadow period. So what an exciting month. You can see there are opportunities to socialize with Venus and Jupiter squaring up. We also have Venus and Mars in a very charismatic link, which can be good for relationships. But the big theme for 2/3 of this month is very much about virtue, grappling with the things that maybe are not so sexy and attractive, but do need looking at to try and adjust. I think what astrology does is give us the tools to keep adjusting and flexing to the circumstances that are playing out in the wider world or within our personal situations. So all this information can help us all to have a clearer understanding of the outside energies that are coming into our situation, but also how we're manifesting those energies, not always consciously. So by the end of the month, it's very much about relationships, but also about making sure we're honouring our individuality too. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Please remember your deep dive individual zodiac sign forecast is underneath this video, and you can click on that for more. But for now, take care, stay safe, and please like, comment, share or subscribe.